Hello, and welcome back to Strange Stories with the Seeker and the Skeptic. Today we are talking to psychic medium and grief coach Deva Neely. After experiencing the profound and tragic loss of her brother, Deva went on a spiritual healing journey and reawakened her psychic abilities. She now uses mediumship and what she's learned in her own healing to help others with their grief. So, welcome, Deva. Thank you for being with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
That's such a loaded question.
I know.
Well, I'm a former teacher. I was in a classroom for 20 years, and my life irrevocably changed on May 19th, 2013, when my brother died by suicide. And I ended up going into this very dark place, obviously, after that aftermath. And there were subsequent traumas after that. So I was dealing with PTSD. I was dealing with suicidal ideation. I spent 7 years struggling just to stay alive. And there was a paradigm shift that happened in my life. I was in a support group for people with PTSD, and a woman asked, "How long have y'all been dealing with PTSD? I just got diagnosed." And I was skimming the comments, and one jumped out at me. This woman said, 43 years and counting.
Wow.
And that was the moment I knew that that could not be my story. I would not survive that. And that is the day I made a conscious decision to do anything and everything I could to heal. And I did try anything and everything. I was fortunate at that time I got into a trauma recovery program, so that helped quite a bit. But I was trying yoga, I was trying meditation, I was trying anything and everything. I did my Reiki level 1, I did a course on angels. Like I just thought, I don't know what's going to stick, but I'm going to try everything and see what works. And what was it, one thing that helped, or was it all the things? I don't know. I don't even know specifically what it was. I think it was that mind shift for me that I decided my story could not and would not be the same as that woman. And it it led me down a path of self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that I could not just survive. I had the opportunity to thrive. And so I believe I am. It doesn't mean life doesn't have struggles. It doesn't mean, I can't get knocked down. What it means is I have the tools and the resiliency to get back up and to understand that it's okay to be happy again, right? Because in the course of grief, we tend to feel guilty after we've lost somebody. We feel guilty if we feel happiness or joy, and we struggle with that. But you start to realize that you morph, you change with grief. Grief doesn't go away. It's I call it a life sentence. But we can learn to live around it. And that's why I decided life is too short. I packed up, I moved to a beach in the Caribbean, and I I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm truly happy and I'm fully living my best life. And so now I say my brother's death saved my life, because
Wow.
his death forced me to look at the things we weren't looking at, but
Mm-hmm.
that both he and I struggled with. And we compensated in different ways. How we coped was very different. But his death forced me to have to look in and have to deal with the ugly things that I was trying to hide or, force back down. And I realized that what I thought was this great life then wasn't. I was just masking.
Mm-hmm.
I was hiding myself in work. I wasn't really living. And so now I see what living means. And it's a hard lesson that we have to learn, or that we're forced to learn, because somebody else had to lose their life in order for us to realize how to live.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm so sorry for your loss, but what you've been able to do in your transformation is beautiful. You've been able to see that pain and hear other people's stories and realize, I don't want that to be me,
Mhm.
And so I think that is absolutely beautiful. In that healing journey that you went on, what what did you find most helpful for you?
I think it was really getting clear on who I was and what I needed. Um, it was surrounding myself with the right people and understanding that sometimes the people we expect to be there for us aren't.
Hmm.
And sometimes those we don't expect come out of the woodwork. But how important it is to create a solid network of people around you who are going to hold you up when you can't stand on your own. And I'm so grateful for the people that are and have been my cheerleaders, because you really do need that support system. And when you're in a place of grieving, you're feeling so alone and it's quite lonely, and you lose people along the way because for some reason people think grief is contagious. I think, right? None of us want to face death. And I think that's where our biggest misconception is. So I see death very differently now than I did before. I'm not scared of it. And I was able to tap into my spirituality, and I was able to tap back into something that I did as a child, and that's communicate with spirit. And now I'm able to help other people connect to their deceased loved ones, find closure, find peace of mind, and to understand that our journey in life doesn't end with death. Our relationships continue. So
You had said in your answers to us that as a child, you were connected with spirit. So tell us a little bit about what that was like for you growing up.
it's funny looking back at it now, because I I talked to them like they were friends. I didn't even know the difference. And I remember my first memory really acknowledging it at 4 years old, trying to explain to my mom that there was this girl who looked just like me. And when I was asleep, she was awake in my dreams. And when I was awake, it's because she was asleep and I was awake in her dreams. And so here I am explaining quantum physics to my mother at 4 years old, not knowing that it's quantum physics.
Yeah.
And my mom going, "Oh, you have an imaginary friend." And I'm like, "No, she's upstairs. What are you talking about?" And I realizing that I would go to places and see and experience things that others weren't. And so it became very clear to me who was real and who wasn't. And by real, I mean in physical form. And we used to go on field trips to this museum. And I grew up in what is known to be a very haunted area of Canada. And we used to go to the museum, which formerly 100 years ago was a poorhouse. And I would always see this little boy, and he was always baiting me to come to him and to play with him. And, when I would tell the story, people would say, "Well, how do you know he wasn't just from another class?" I'm like, because he didn't look like us. Like, he was in bare feet. He was in these ragged, baggy, almost burlap looking pants with this blousy, dirty white shirt and tousled hair. He was not of our time.
Hmm.
And, to me, it was every day. How did I explain it to other people? I didn't. I kind of saw things going on, or I communicated and didn't think much of it. Um, so what I learned later and what I've come to figure out is that girl that I was communicating with all the time is actually my guardian angel. And I've always been obsessed with twins my whole life and didn't understand what the obsession was, but I always felt if I had kids, they'd be twins. And I gravitated to the twins I would meet, fascinated by twins. And this entity that I was communicating with, like I said, looked like me, talked like me. Her name was Rachel, but she wanted a fancy name. She said, if I got a fancy name, she got one too. She called herself Raquel. And so it wasn't until probably about 10 years ago, I overheard my mom telling a story to a friend about when she was pregnant with twins, me and a twin. I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Wow.
And she's like, you know this. I'm like, no, I don't. And she said, you were a twin. Your twin died in utero. All of a sudden, everything made sense to me.
Yeah.
And I realized, and of course, got confirmation from her that she was my twin sister.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Putting those pieces together.
And so
Yeah.
late in life as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe, but it explained my fascination with twins, my
Mm-hmm.
obsession with twins, because I didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had twins in my distant family, but nobody within, my scope at that point. So when I overheard that story and made that connection, all of a sudden everything made sense.
Well, it's funny how when we're adults, our parents just kind of like lay stuff on us like they told you when you were like 12 or something.
Right. Like,
You've never
that's everyday knowledge.
Yeah, of course this is what this is. Really?
Yeah.
Had a few of those myself. I know how it goes.
Yeah. Was there something that happened that, or it could have been many things that happened that kind of like shut down your mediumship abilities as you were growing up?
Yeah, there was trauma that happened. And my parents divorced at 8 years old. I was 8, my brother was 3. And we were uprooted from our home, had to move to another home, had to move again. Like it was a lot of stuff that was going on. My dad was an alcoholic, and we didn't know or how to identify that at the time. My dad was also a narcissist, which until I got into therapy after my brother died, I didn't even know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know that things that were happening to us weren't normal until my therapist was like, that's not normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so therapy really saved me as well. Um, because looking back, I could see the patterns. I could see the gaslighting. I could see and I was like, oh no, yeah, he was manipulating us and he was doing these things. And so it was in that time. It's not that I didn't sense them or communicate. I didn't openly do so.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I sort of shut myself off. And so in my attempt to heal and my trying anything and everything to heal after my brother's death, it was actually my brother that helped me tap back in. And it started with him yelling in my ear. I would hear my name shouted in my ear. And it was in that state of you're not quite asleep, but you're not awake. You're in that in-between stage. Yeah. And it would startle me awake. And for the longest time, I just thought, it was my mind playing tricks on me. And then it kept happening multiple times to a point where you can't ignore it anymore. And it would be like my brother to do that too. And, I jokingly say he was an asshole in life. And by that, I mean like annoyingly prankster,
Mm-hmm.
kind of play around and mess with you. Why would that change in the afterlife? And it wasn't until one day I had been ghost hunting in an old theater in my hometown. And we had experienced ghost activity in this theater. And I went home afterwards, went to bed. My brother yelled in my ear again, but the difference was I heard my name called 12 different times. And I sat up in bed and went, well, that's new. What is going on? And I realized that the spirits from the theater had followed me home.
Oh
So I
boy.
had to send them back.
Hmm.
And that was me going, oh, I'm tapping back in. Okay, I'm opening myself back up. And then it was like a vortex after that. It just fully opened, and I had to learn how to deal with it and cope with it and set some boundaries.
So how do you send spirits back? Is it just an intention or is there something else?
It's an intention. I did a smudging as well,
Hmm.
right? I'm like, it was lovely to meet you, but this is not your space.
Hmm.
You can go home now because this is my space. And as much as this has been fun, I don't want you here. And I sent them away, and they were quite obliging. Um, sometimes they're not as obliging, and I've done some energy entity clearings for other people, and it's not as easy as it was for me at that point. Um, so it is intention, and it is communication, and it's setting clear boundaries with them.
Hmm. Do you think um that they followed you because they could tell that you were open? That like is there something they wanted from you or don't you know?
I what's my experience since then is spirits tend to gravitate to me because I can communicate with them, and they all have messages. Um, and the best way to sort of explain how that works and why I had to set up boundaries is there was an old hospital where I lived. They had closed that down, moved to a new hospital, and I could never drive by there without so many coming at me because they all have messages. And when they know that you can communicate them, they gravitate.
Hmm.
And I would have to set very clear boundaries because it's overwhelming. And so when I do group readings as well, when there's a lot of people, I have to sort of set the order of how things are going to go. Otherwise, they rush me, and it can be so overwhelming and draining. It drains my energy a lot because I want to help as many as I can, and I want to pass along as many messages as I can. But I'm only one person, and it's not cut and dry. It's not easy because sometimes they piggyback on each other, and I'm trying to figure out who is who so I can define it for somebody so that they know who I'm communicating with. Um, so it's been a learning curve to get back into it. As a kid, it just happened very naturally. Um, and sort of tapping back in, it was like learning to ride a bike after
Hmm.
not having a bike for decades,
Yeah.
right? You're wobbly at first. I was
Yeah.
wobbly. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening.
I mean, I
Um,
feel like psychic senses it's a muscle, and that you obviously are more naturally open, but I feel like yeah, like to like get more in tune, you kind of have to work that muscle a little bit.
yes, definitely. And boundaries are so important
Hmm.
because they will come at you if they know that they can you can hear them or you can pass along their message. And there are times where I don't want to be open to that,
Yeah.
right? So I have to set those boundaries. And it was actually a friend of mine who helped me with that because I was so overwhelmed at times, especially
Definitely.
living in a place that's really haunted.
Haunted. Yeah, I can imagine. It's like you're being
Everywhere I went, it was,
bombarded. Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
The energy here is palpable. Can you feel it, or is it just me? It's
Just
just me.
me. Okay.
Awesome.
You had mentioned to us in the questions you returned for us, your grandparents' farmhouse.
Yes. Yeah.
What are some of the things that were going on with that? That seems pretty out. there.
That house was so haunted. It's funny. I talk to my cousins about it all the time because we all had experiences in that house. And me being sensitive to that anyway, there was a room in their house I wouldn't even go in. I firmly believe that there was a very negative entity in that room. And there were strange things that would happen in that room. And that room, even in the dead of summer, would be ice cold, no air conditioning. And, just stepping into that room made me feel almost sick to my stomach. And there were things, like I said, there were things that would happen in that room that we couldn't explain. Like my brother was playing with a lighter, and which he shouldn't have been. I think he was 5, 6 at the time. And he said he dropped it and the room caught on fire.
Oh, wow.
And so, of course, everybody was freaking out and saying my brother was malicious and had set it on fire on purpose. But even me as a kid, I'm like, and funny, I have a lighter here. The minute
Yeah.
you release the flame goes out. How did the bedspread catch on fire? Just dropping, like, and in my mind, I'm like, no, there is something evil in that room. But it stayed in that room. But there were also other things that would happen. I remember I was babysitting my cousins. My aunt and uncle had lived there after my grandmother passed. And I was in the kitchen and it was a farm. So there was a barn and there was a light. And in silhouette, I saw what looked like a man and a young teenage boy, like not a young child. And I freaked out thinking, oh my God, somebody's here. And I didn't know what to do because I'm on this 150-acre farm in the middle of nowhere with taking care of my 2 cousins, and there were 2 people on the property. So I'm like, do I call the police? What do I do? And as I'm freaking out thinking, what do I do? They dissipated before walking into the barn. Like they just disappeared. And I was like, oh, damn it. And I would hear things as well. I would hear voices. And I didn't know how to explain it. And it wasn't until my aunt had explained a story that happened with a boyfriend who also was sensitive to spirits that was confirmation for me, because he could hear a man talking and he was saying to her, don't you hear that? Don't you hear that? And she's like, hear what? And he was freaking her out. And he's like, I hear this man and I hear this boy, except, the boy doesn't talk very well. It's slurred, and it confirmed what I was experiencing as well. And it wasn't until afterwards that we found out that there was a man and his son who died in a fire in that house before my grandparents bought it. And the son had Down syndrome. And so his speaking ability was slurred. And it was like, oh, okay, that fits. That fits. Got it. But there were certain areas of the house that I didn't want to go to alone. In the basement, the crawl space, nope. Don't ask me to go down there. Like, if I knew now, no, if I knew then what I know now, I would have cleared some of that energy. Like there was just some weird stuff going on.
What do you think? I mean, I know we don't know for sure, but like, what are your theories about like darker energies or entities? Like, what are they? Where do they come from? Why do they exist in certain places?
That's such a good question. And it's funny because I had always asked my angels to protect me against that. I didn't want to deal with that, but unfortunately with all the good, there comes the bad. And I've had to do clearings of places that had some really crazy, I don't know if I can swear on this or not,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
really crazy shit.
Yeah.
And I was just like, Whoa. There was a clearing I did with a friend of mine. She and I do a lot of clearings together in this house in California. And, you know, I was seeing a succubus. And I didn't even know what that was. And this woman had an attachment, and we have it on video. You could see when she was talking to us versus when this entity would take over and the change in her. And this is all stuff I never wanted to participate in,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't always have the choice. And so what we've come to learn is that that stuff exists just as much as the spirits of our loved ones. And combating it is in calling in the protection of your spiritual team. Because for me, my firm belief is one will always trump the other. And so when we do clearings, we bring in our angel teams, we lift this veil of darkness that's there, and we work hard at getting rid of these negative entities. And so a lot of it is energetic clearing, right? And some of it is residual. It's been there for so long, it's almost ingrained in that place. And so sometimes it takes a lot of effort and more than one time to get that clear. And in some cases, you can't even fully rid a place of that entity. There's just so much that has either happened in that place. So it's a very surreal experience dealing with the negative. And I never wanted to believe it existed,
Yeah.
but I can't deny it anymore, given the things that I've seen and experienced in doing these clearings for people. And it's just trying to root yourself in the belief that there's more good than bad out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, understandable. I don't want to be anywhere near negative or dark energies either, but I feel like maybe part of your soul's purpose is to help transmute that energy, which is why it's being brought into your awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, you make a great observation there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's trying to quell the fear of it because they feed on the fear. They
Mm-hmm.
feed on that energy. And so I always know I am protected. And I know that my spirit team is there to protect me. I ask them for protection every day. And I tell that to my clients as well, right? Put on your coat of armor every day, whatever that looks like for you. Sometimes for me, it's bubble wrap. And I ask them, protect me from all things that are not meant for me, and protect me in facing the things that aren't mine,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when we're open energetically, and there are a lot of empaths out there, we tend to absorb so much of the energy that's out in the world, and then we take it on thinking it's ours, and it's not. So it's learning how to clear that yourself and how to protect yourself every day before you go out into the world.
Yeah, that's so important. I know I'm definitely an empath, and before I knew what an empath was, I just thought I was crazy. Like, you know,
Mhm.
really struggled with like regulation, and then
Yeah.
somebody explained to me in my 20s, like, you're an empath, like you're absorbing everybody's energy. And I'm like, just the relief. Yeah.
That light bulb goes on.
Yeah. It's like just like, oh my God, my whole life makes sense now, and then I've been on a spiritual journey of Reiki and working with angels and my spiritual team as well, and just not that it's perfect, because I definitely have, you know, times where it's like it's really hard because I'm still absorbing energy, but at
Mhm.
least I have the tools now of like I can release it. Before it was just staying stuck inside of me.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think not to downplay mental illness in any way, and especially
Yeah.
when somebody to experience it, I do think that there is a part of it that is the energy that we absorb,
Yeah.
right? It's not being able to identify what is ours and what is not.
Yeah.
And so having all these unexplained feelings, um, I think part of it is they're unexplained because they're not ours to carry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean just that feeling of like I feel a way, but I don't have access to understanding why I feel that way, right? Like if we can put words to I'm having this feeling and this is the reason why, sometimes it's easier to process, but when it's just like I don't know why I feel this way,
Mhm.
it's a lot harder to work through. So I definitely agree with you. Like I do think that is I think there's more people who are energetically sensitive than know that they are energetically sensitive
Yes,
out there.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah, and it's funny because I used to do posts and I should do more of them, doing Reiki. And a friend of mine, I was a teacher at a school with her. She she said to me one day, she goes, "Why did I feel that?" Like she's like, "It was so bizarre. I was so drawn in and I could feel things." And I said, "Well, that's kind of the whole point of
Point.
Reiki." And she's like, "But you were doing it on the screen. Like, how did?" And because that's the power of energy. She
Exactly.
was just so blown away by how much she was affected by this clearing I did in a post. Like it wasn't, she
Yeah.
wasn't even
In
live with me.
person. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, "I'm sold. Oh my God." She said, "I can't explain to you the feelings I had in that energetically."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Welcome connection."
Yep. Let me bring you into this world because it is
Yes.
magical and beautiful. Absolutely.
Right. And it can be so healing and therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I had my first Reiki session, after I found out I was an empath, and I felt like I had released 100 pounds of weight. Like it
Oh, I'm
just
sure.
was
Yeah.
like, I was like, I have never felt this light in my entire life. And so
Yeah.
that's when I was like, I'm absolutely going as far as I possibly can with this. Like, this is for me because I could feel it in that moment of just how powerful it was.
Oh, absolutely. Do you find now that you're in tune with that, that you can go into anywhere public, like a grocery store, and you can go by somebody and you can feel that they're carrying so much. You almost want to like do a clearing for them. And I know technically we're not supposed to because you have to ask for
Yeah.
and then get confirmation on that. But some people I'm like, "Oh, honey, you are carrying so much that isn't yours." Right?
Yeah.
And I think to explain to people who may not have experienced that, it is almost palpable how you can feel it.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's so
Eh,
heavy.
definitely. I do a lot of before I go out in public. I don't necessarily put like a huge, how do I say it? Like it's not a firm barrier. I
Mhm,
was kind of taught of doing this energy filter.
mhm.
So it's more of like I'm putting a filter around me, so anything I'm taking in is kind of transmuted into love and light, and then I'm pushing it back out, filtering it through love and light. So yeah, that definitely helps me going out in public,
Yeah,
because I'm just like I'm not experiencing it at the same denseness, I think.
yeah. I love that actually. That's really good, right? Only what's coming in is what's in your best.
Yeah. And then I'm sending it back out to those people like transmuted
Yeah, yeah.
type of
Do you
thing.
have a hard time in crowded spaces?
Oh
Crowded
yeah.
places? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I avoid them at all costs.
Yeah.
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 Like going to a concert, as fun as it is, it's also like it exhausts me.
Yeah, I need a recovery day after something like
Yeah.
that. Like, yeah, I mean, it's fun and you're feeling the energy of everybody else, and then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I need a
But that's
nap.
the problem. You're feeling the energy of everybody
Exactly.
else, right?
Yeah.
And it knocks you on your butt afterwards.
Yeah.
Um, it can feel so overwhelming too. And
Yeah.
it's hard to explain that to somebody who doesn't know how to experience that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you do grief work with people, and so that's sitting with a lot of really heavy emotions. So I'm curious about, kind of what you do to like not only help the people that you're working with, but like also help kind of like yourself process that energy.
I think that it's a great question because, it's there's a lot of heaviness to it. Um, the thing that my main goal is for people to know, one, they're not alone. That there are people who understand, are people that are in their corner. They are never alone. And two, that it feels like this might be forever, that this feeling that they're feeling might be forever, but I'm proof that it's not. And, to understand that it's okay not to be okay. It's absolutely important that they feel all the feelings because some people don't want to acknowledge the ugly feelings, anger, frustration, right? Because they feel if they're angry at their loved one for dying, that somehow that's going to that's mean, or that's a horrible thing for them to be thinking, and to understand, help them understand that everything that they're feeling is important, not to dismiss it, and to acknowledge it. And the minute that they can embrace that is the minute that they can truly start healing, because we tend to try and stuff it down.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, helping other people in their grief, at first I was afraid because I thought, oh, is this going to bring me down that path again? But it's not. I can sit there objectively, and I can sit there from a place of fully understanding where they're coming from. And my goal is to make them feel that as well, that they feel supported. They feel like I know, I hear, I understand, I see them for where they're at, who they are, and understand where they're hoping to go, but they think that that's not possible. So my goal, the way I view it, is I'm holding their hand and walking with them.
Yep.
Right. I think that was the biggest thing. I keep thinking in what I do, I keep thinking, what did I need back then?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I've been able to create what I'm doing now, is where can I fill the gaps where I felt most alone, or where I felt fear, or where I felt all these things going through my process, and how can I fill in the gaps for other people?
I think that's so true that most of us just want somebody who is going to acknowledge and validate our experiences and hold space for us to be able to go through that journey. And it sounds like exactly what you're doing is you're just, I can't fix this for you. I can't take the grief away. I can't change the circumstances that caused it, but I can walk alongside you and let you know that you're supported, you are loved, you're not alone. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's my goal, right? Because, and I think we said this at the beginning of our talk, there's such a loneliness. You feel this incredible loneliness after losing somebody. This void
Yeah.
that you think is you're never going to be able to fill. And in a way, we don't. And that's just the reality of it. But we learn to acknowledge it, to have it, to, like you said, to hold space, and understand what that means. But we can still move forward, and we can still have a fulfilling life thereafter. And my take on it as well is when I can help people tap into their own spiritual intuitive abilities, that they can learn how to hold space for their loved one who is still there with them as well, right? To reconnect, that relationship just looks different now. It's still there, it's ever present,
Mm-hmm.
it just looks different. And how can I help somebody tap into that themselves so that they can move forward in knowing and communicating and, being able to carry them with them.
What does your relationship with your brother look like now that he's on the other side?
I think it's better now than it ever was when he was in human form,
Mm-hmm.
right? I get the true essence of who he was. Where when he was in human form, he was battling a lot. My brother was dealing with drug addiction, and that was his coping mechanism, right? His self-medicating was his way to cope with our childhood and everything we went through. And so now I think I get him in his purest form. And there's still those essences of my brother that I remember when he was in human form. Like I said, he was a jackass then, he's a jackass now. He dive bombs other people's readings. I have friends who are mediums, and if one day my friend messaged me, she goes, "Do you want to hop on this call? I'm working with mediumship students, and I think your brother's here." And I was like, I believe it, right? Because he swoops in, he leaves everybody perplexed, and then he goes. Um, and I think for me, what was interesting with his daughter, my niece, um, how he communicated with me throughout her growing up as well. I took her on her first date. She went on a date with this guy, this boy. She was in grade 7 at the time. And she asked me if I would take them out. And I could hear my brother in my ear. What are you doing? Why do you can't be doing that? Like, and he was swearing at me, and he was all kinds of it, and it was funny, right? Because it's exactly how I know my brother would have reacted
Mm-hmm.
in human form as well. Um, so I think my relationship, I value so much our relationship now. I feel him guiding me. I feel him, trying to be there now when he couldn't be there in human form. So I think I embrace the connection that we have now, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah. It's a beautiful gift that you have, you know, to have your abilities and be able to now experience this. Yes, he's not here physically, but he is very much still here with you. It's beautiful.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And my mom sees it now too.
Mm.
Right? Like she'll call me. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I was just looking outside and this white butterfly came by." And I said, "Hey, Brent." And then when I told her, because she would ask me, is Brent here? I'm like, yeah. She recognized that butterflies were her sign for him.
Mhm.
Cardinals were his sign for me. Um, except now I live somewhere where there's no cardinals. So I'm like, now what are you gonna do? Now I see dragonflies everywhere. So there was one time she was in her garden and there was a butterfly, and she was at this point she was a little skeptical, and she was like, "Hi, Brent." And she's like, "Okay, if you're really Brent, show me." And this butterfly came up and landed on her hand.
Oh,
And she called me going, "You're never gonna believe what happened." I'm like, "No, I do believe it."
yep, I totally believe it.
Yeah. And there was another time she saw another butterfly. It's a white butterflies, particularly for my brother, for her. And she saw this beautiful monarch butterfly, I think. And she's like, "Was that Brent?" And I went, "No, that was no Rosario." And she was like, "Oh my God, I was just with my aunt and uncle yesterday. We were just talking about her." And I didn't know it because I'm not even in the same country as she is.
Hmm.
And so I didn't know. I just said, "No, I think I'm getting that this is this person." And it's not that we talk about my great grandmother at all, really. Like, we don't really have a conversation about her. But I knew I had this feeling it was her. And for her to validate that, saying, "I was just talking about her yesterday."
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's things like that. And now my stepfather is a believer because he did not believe. And then one day he asked me if I would do a reading and connect him to his mom and his sister. And he was in tears by the end of it. And he said to my mom, he's like, there are things that she said. He's like, she wouldn't have known those things. So now he recommends me to people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Converting people one
Right?
reading at a time. I love
The
it.
harshest of critics too. Like
Yeah.
he was
Yep.
having none of it before.
Yep.
Well, I'm just curious, and this is a question that I think more people should be asked who had these types of experiences. Do you think that it, do you think that these personalities that you're able to communicate with are around because they're just around, or do you think that they're around because you think about them and want to communicate? What do you, where do you think these folks are when this is not happening?
I think they're always around us. I think, and I firmly believe that they are always with us, guiding us and helping us. That even when you don't believe, or even when you don't know how to communicate with them, I think they're still with us. And I think they show us signs every day, just some people don't know how to see it. And sometimes it takes them longer to tap in and go, oh, so maybe that isn't a coincidence that this is happening every day, or I'm seeing this bird every day, or right. And people say things to me all the time, like, I ask for signs and I don't get signs. And I'm like, you have to let go of your expectation of what that sign should look like. Because you can ask for a butterfly, but if it's the dead of winter, there's not going to be a butterfly that's going to fly by you as you're walking down a path. It could come in the form of, it pops up on your screen in an ad on YouTube. It could be that a bus goes by and there's a butterfly on an ad. You have to let go of what you think that sign is going to be, and you have to be open to it, how it comes to you. But I firmly believe that they are always with us, and that we can call them in anytime we want as well.
Agree with that. So they're always with us, perhaps in a different dimension, right?
Mhm.
What do you, just in your experiences, I know, again, this is one of those questions where we don't know for sure, but like, what do you think happens when somebody transitions and they go to the other side? Like, what exactly happens? What does that look like?
So here's the information that I've been given on that. Because I've asked lots of questions, and I'm getting information all the time. When we transition, it's an immediate, it's almost like a light switch. And we are immediately greeted by our spirit team. And so the one comfort I hope that I can give everybody is nobody dies alone, ever. And that was the biggest thing I struggled with my brother's death, because he chose to die, and he died in a very gruesome way by himself. I now know he was not alone, that his spirit team was with him immediately. I know that my grandmother, who I would never have expected to be there, was the first to greet him. And so we can live in the comfort of knowing that when we transition, there is a whole lot of spirits, but they are waiting for us. And that transition into that other dimension, it's like anywhere we would travel. We have to acclimate, and we have to shed our human experience. We have to shed our human body and shed the things that we carry as human beings as we transition into what we already know we are. Our spirit never changes, right? Our essence never truly changes. And so we reacclimate into something we already know, which is why I firmly believe, and I've heard other people say this as well, that we go home. It's not going to heaven or hell, or we go home. And, I know from experience of people in my life passing, I had a friend pass in December, and a mutual friend of ours was with him in the hospital, and he had a head injury. And my friend Valerie, who was with him, messaged me, and she says, "Is it possible for somebody with a head injury to start being able to see spirits?" And I said, absolutely, right? Like, I think that's a switch that can happen for anybody really at any time. But in what she was describing to me, I knew he was not going to be with us long, because I knew she was describing his spirit team was in the room waiting for him.
Yep.
And the way he described what he was seeing, I knew. I couldn't tell her because I didn't, it's such hard information for somebody to process, especially, given that circumstance. So it just reassured me in knowing that they're there waiting for us. And I hope that brings comfort to people. It really is like a reunion. And then I think we go through a process of evaluation. And some people think they call it Judgment Day in the Bible, or, religious churches explain it that way. I don't see it so much as a judgment day. I see it more of an evaluation day, where, and it's not even a day, it's a period of time where we look back on our life in human form. And it's like a course evaluation. When you do a course in college or university, and at the end you have to give an evaluation of, did you learn all the things you thought you were going to learn? How was the professor? I think we go through that kind of evaluation where we're like, did I hit all the things that I had intended spiritually before I entered that human form? What could I have learned, or what do I need to take with me in my next journey in human form when we reincarnate? So we do this evaluation period. And I think from my experience and asking my spirit team, this is why we feel such a void immediately after somebody dies. And I often hear people explain that at the funeral, they just felt so empty. They didn't feel their loved one there. And it's often because they're not. Like, funerals are for the living, they're not for the dead.
Yeah.
And it's often that they're not, or we feel this emptiness right after somebody passes because they're in that state of transition and they're doing that evaluation. So that's why when people want to do readings with me immediately after somebody dies, I highly recommend they wait 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
Because I can't, and I can never guarantee a spirit coming through, but in that time, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
So that's what the information I've been given in that. And I'm fascinated by that. Because like you said, we don't ever really fully know, but that's the information I've been given.
Yeah, a couple of times you've mentioned the phrase spirit team. What comprises that? What does that mean? Just in case somebody listening is not familiar with that as a concept.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we all have one. We all have a spirit team, and it's made up of our angels that are assigned to us, right? Our guardian angel is assigned to us at birth, and a guardian angel is often one or two. Some people have more than one. They're assigned to us at birth, and they often have never been in human form. And then we have an array of other different angels that make up our spirit team. And there are angels that come in and out of our team as we develop and as we need things. So our team grows, and oftentimes our loved ones join that team in wanting to help guide us and wanting to help, bring the things that we are meant to experience and have happen and help us through those tougher times. And so the best way I can describe it is a spirit team, because that's literally what they are. They're assigned to you, they're your cheerleaders, and they focus on you. And then there's helper angels. There are angels that will come in and out. And I often send helper angels or healing angels to people who are struggling, or people who, need healing because of an accident or because of something that has happened. So there's a whole force of spirits and entities working on our behalf. So,
Gotcha. Okay, that is very, very interesting. And I asked this question because I feel like I don't think any two people really have the same answer for this, and I'm always curious to see what people say. Um, when you say angel, what do you mean? What is an angel in your experience?
an angel,
Hard question.
it's a great question. There are different levels of angels. Like I said, I mentioned the guardian angel. That is the one that is assigned to you from birth, and they stay with you. And then there are other angels, or different levels of angels that come in and out. We've got like the masters, which are high level spirits that have been in human form. And that would be like Buddha, Jesus, those types of angels. We've got our archangels, which we've been hearing about archangels since the beginning of time, that come in and out of our lives and help us as well. And so I think in essence, all spirits become angels, just to different degrees. Right. And I know we think of angels as these ethereal beings with wings, and we have this picture in our head. And I think it's a beautiful picture, but I think it's simpler than that. I think it's just the energy and the essence of these spirits.
I definitely connect with angels a lot. And I think of it as just different aspects of the divine. Like my belief system is like we are all part of the same source of love, right? And so angels or spirits or whatever can kind of connect with us through a different vibration, but it's still coming from that same source.
Yes.
That's how I view it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the divine or source energy, or the universe, whatever
Mhm.
we want to call it, God, some people call it
Yeah.
God. I think you're right. It's all from the same place. And that's what kills me when we see in the world these places fighting over their religious beliefs, when
Yeah.
in essence, it's all coming from the same
Same
place,
thing. Yep.
right? The foundation of almost every religion is based on the same foundation.
Yep.
And it's man who has skewed from there.
Yep. Yeah, and I think a lot of people when they hear angels, they think of, Christian angels, and that, that some religion gets to own that, and I don't believe that at all. I believe
No,
that they are for everybody, no matter what your spiritual tradition is.
they are non-denominational.
Yeah.
Non-denominational. And it's funny too, because a message that came through to me that I thought was very eye-opening is there really is no gender either.
Mm-hmm.
They explain things in gender form so that we better understand, but there is no gender. It's very gender fluid, which is funny because nowadays people are thinking this is this new concept, this non-binary, and people expressing that their internal feeling is that they don't identify as male or female, which to me, I sit back and go, that's because they're tapping into their divine source in understanding that it is fluid. There is no gender definition like we as humans in human form think.
I mean, we all have masculine and feminine energies, and
Absolutely.
right, like you said, it is fluid. It does not mean, I might be more in my masculine energy one day because it's my productive day and I'm getting things done, right? And then
Yeah.
another day I might be in more of my feminine energy where it's like I'm just being and receiving, and you know, it yeah. We as humans have a lot of ways of messing things up,
Oh gosh. Yep. We make things so much harder for ourselves
We
too.
sure do,
Oh,
and judge so much because it's like that is not what society says, right? And so that makes us feel different. And so the difference is scary and we want to control it. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of it is just fear based. And if we could just take a step back.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. And if we just open ourselves up too, right? Like I think the problem is people don't take that time to just listen.
Yeah.
And we don't ever have that time to allow those messages to come in because we're either on our phone or we're watching TV or we've got something on, like we constantly have noise. So I often ask people, when was the last time you just took 5 minutes to sit in silence, doing nothing, and just sit? And people get so uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, that's when feelings come up, right? If we have
Silence
that
is scary.
space. What did you say?
Silence is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be for a lot of people. Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, if people could see me, like what my days consist of, I am productive. I do things, but I have a lot of time where I just have my eyes closed and I'm looking inside of myself and I'm just being, I'm connecting, I'm meditating, I'm giving myself Reiki. And I feel like I have to do those things to function in society, you know?
Absolutely. And when
Yeah.
you start to do that, you realize the value in it and you want to do more of it
Yeah.
because it is such a powerful place and a peaceful place and a happy place, right? Like when people
Yeah.
say find your happy place,
Inside of yourself. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It just, shut up and listen for a second.
I'm with you. 100%.
Yeah. But there's so much discomfort and silence. People, they doesn't feel right. Or they all constantly feel like they need to be doing something. Take 5 minutes and just chill the hell out.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it
Well,
definitely is an avoidance of the discomfort, but it's like you can't move through that discomfort. You can't move through that grief unless
Yeah,
you're able to sit with it.
yeah, definitely. Definitely.
big thing that makes that difficult, I think, and at least here in the States, I don't know how it is outside the United States, but here in the States, the economic issues that we have here has caused hustle culture to be such a big element of everything that we do that the majority of people at this point, if they're not actively being productive, quote, in that manner of making money, we kind of have been trained to feel that we are doing something wrong. And so
Oh, yeah.
it becomes very difficult for most people now to be able to sit there and exist or engage in a hobby without monetizing it or reading a book without feeling like we've given up some amount of money, which is important because nothing is free here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think our socioeconomic ish situation now, and I think all over the world, is it's getting harder just to survive
Right.
monetarily because the prices of things have gone up exponentially, but people's wages have not.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's causing this mentality of struggle and lack. And I see it here living in the Caribbean. I live in the Dominican Republic. And if people say, oh, well, you're living in a third world country. No, it's not. It's a developing country. It's actually quite wealthy. It's just not being distributed to its people properly. And so when you're living in a place where people are desperate, people will do desperate things. So there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of theft here. They will try and pull the wool over your eyes, and they see you as a money pit, thinking, well, you'll just get more money, but I need this now. And they find ways to get it. And it can be very disheartening. I just looked, it's May 11th, 11:11 a.m.
Yeah,
here.
that's
Uh,
awesome.
so I think we're in this state of desperation, which is so far removed from that internal spiritual place
Yeah.
we're meant to be.
Yeah.
We've got to get people back to tapping into that and realize that abundance will come when we go internally and we start tapping back into ourselves. But that's really
Definitely.
hard. People struggle with that. I struggle with that still.
Yeah, definitely. I struggle with that as well. Like it is a belief of mine of like we live in an abundant universe, you know. I try not to live in a place of scarcity, but I have an ego, I have parts of me that do still fear that, and because like what Jonathan said, like we live in a society where everything costs something and like you said, wages aren't going up, but the cost of living is definitely going up. And I mean, that's part of the reason why we're moving, is because the cost of living where we're living right now has just gone up exponentially and our
Yep.
income has
That's why I
not.
moved to the Caribbean. Well, it's part of the reason why I moved
Yeah.
to the Caribbean, because the cost of living here is much cheaper than it was
Yeah.
in Canada where I was.
Yep. I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, here in Southwest Virginia, the cost like just like rent or to own a home has tripled in the past 6 years, and I
Yeah.
don't know anybody whose wages have gotten better, no matter what type of job. Good jobs, bad jobs doesn't matter. Nobody's getting any compensation for this. Who
Yeah,
knows who's
exactly.
actually paying these prices? I sure don't know.
I know, I know. Out of curiosity, I was looking back at home in Canada to see what it would be like if I moved back. And like studio apartments going for $2,000 a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're seeing here too.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Great, like people charging a stupid amount of money for renting a bedroom in their house and sharing the
Yeah.
house. It's mind blowing.
It is mind blowing. It definitely is. And that's why we need more people like you doing the good work, putting more love and light out in there into the world, changing the vibration so that hopefully one day things will shift in a more
Yeah,
positive direction.
I'm with you on that. I tried so hard. Even one thing that I explained to clients, and one thing that I did, and this was part of my healing journey, was I would create balls of love and I would throw these balls of energetic love at the people who hurt me. And it was a way for me to help get to a place of forgiveness, and hope that that energy would do something to help them in their healing journey, right? Because hurt people hurt people.
Yep.
And so if they're not willing to do the internal work, I was trying to send energy that would at least maybe kickstart it, something. But it made me feel better as well, thinking I'm not putting hate out to the people who have hurt me. I'm not putting negative energy. I want to throw love and light, literally, at them. And it's up to them what they do with that, even though they don't know I'm sending it to them.
Maybe not here in the 3D, but
Right.
spiritually, they absolutely
Exactly.
do. Yeah.
Exactly. That was my firm belief that
Yep.
I'm gonna it's that what's that concept? The kill them with kindness
Yeah.
kind of, right?
Yeah.
Covertly throwing love and light and hoping it sticks.
Yeah. That is a very hard one. And that is something I believe in, do as well. And for the people that I work with, that is a really hard place to get to. But I think when you can do that, you do heal, because it's like I'm not holding on to this poisonous anger anymore, right?
Yeah.
I've transmuted that energy and now I can just see you for your wounded parts and I can try to just do my part in trying to help you heal. And that is just loving you.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And one thing that I learned in my journey of healing, and I did soul coaching
Hmm.
with a woman. And the one thing I learned was soul-based love, which was a hard concept for me to wrap my mind around. But once I did, I can't believe living any other way. Because when we come at everything from a place of soul-based love, we see the world very differently. And it's like you said, we see people for their wounded bits and we love them anyway. And it's a hard concept to wrap your head around, but it makes me a happier person when I
Hmm.
can take a step back and go, okay, how can I look at this from a place of love, not anger, not hate, not, and I think the world would look very differently if everybody had that opportunity to take that step back and reevaluate and look at everything from a place of soul-based love. Because that's our essence, that's who we are. Our soul, our spirit, that's exactly what we come from. The source, the divine, is soul-based love. We are all from that. So how do we get people to tap back into that?
Have conversations like this and the
Exactly.
work that
Exactly.
you're doing and sharing that with people absolutely is the way to do that. And I believe I'm definitely with you. It's not always easy, but it definitely makes the world a better place when we're able to approach people with compassion. And I think an important thing is like people hold on to anger or hurt to protect themselves. And it's like you don't have to, because you can have that soul-based love while still having physical boundaries, right? Like just
Yeah.
because you have forgiven somebody or you have decided like I'm going to see you through a compassionate lens does not mean that that person continues to get access into your life to hurt you. Like both of those things can be true at the same time.
Yes. I 100% agree with that. Right. It's funny because people listening, you might think it's very kumbaya, right? Everybody's in a circle and holds hands, very earth muffiny. But there's truth in that. There's so much truth in that. And we choose to poke fun at it. But if you really sit back and think about it, it's really very simple.
Yeah,
We as humans make it complicated.
I agree.
Our human selves get in the way so much.
um During I think it was my master level Reiki training, during one of like the attunements, I channeled a message from spirit and it was love is the answer to all questions.
Mm,
And to me that has become kind of like my mantra for life. It's like it in any situation, bring love into it, right? Bring
yeah,
that compassion, bring that forgiveness, bring that trying to see people through the best lens. Again, not without boundaries, but love is the answer. And
yeah.
I will
Oh,
sing Kumbaya with people all day long.
me too. Let's do it. Absolutely. And it's a nice visual if you think about, you know, everybody circling the world holding hands,
Yeah.
right? It's such a great visual. It
Yeah.
really should be how we're living.
Yep.
But there's such a divide and there's such hate. And unfortunately, we're letting it win,
Yeah.
right? And this is why we have people like us who are silently in the background trying to fight it,
Yep.
trying to bring people to the light. Right. Well, and they say live by example. I all the time people say to me, "Oh, you've got such great energy." Awesome. I've been working really hard at that. Excellent. I'm glad it's coming across.
Yep. But it does make a difference, because that energy, like we were talking about before, of like being in a crowded room and stuff like that, like energy is infectious. So it's like if you're radiating that positivity and that love and that compassion, like that does have an impact on other people, whether they
Yeah,
know it consciously or not.
absolutely. 100%. Right. And we get that sense. I often say to people, and even as a teacher, I used to say, you have a choice of how you face your day. And your choices affect other people, whether you want it to or not. So what are you choosing today? Are you choosing happiness or are you choosing something else?
Yeah.
And when you walk into a room, have you ever had the sense you've walked into something and you're like, what did I miss? Right? Something's happened here and nobody's talking, but I know somebody's had an argument because I can feel that
Feel
energy.
it.
Right. And
Yeah.
when you explain it to people like that, they're like, oh, is that what that is? Yes, that's exactly what that is. Right. And I think that's why, for me, as somebody who's traveled as well and with disability, that's why I have to be so conscious of my energy. Because when I would go into places like the Anne Frank house, it that energy in there really affected me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. And I was with my mom and we went for coffee afterwards and we just sat there because both of us, and my mom not even aware of that energy, we both kind of said, it almost feels wrong to talk now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because you feel the energy that is still existing in that space. And I think it speaks to the power of energy. How long ago did that story happen that we
Yeah.
can still go into that place and feel it? And so if that's true, why is that not true of any place we go into on a daily basis? Right. And so if people can start reining in their own energy and being consciously making a conscious effort in what energy they're putting out, we can change the world.
Yep. I believe it.
That's our mission.
I'm with ya. Fighting the good fight.
We are the world. We are children.
You mentioned that you had a situation that you had to deal with some poltergeist activity. I'm just curious about that story.
Oh, the poltergeist activity? Oh, that was in university. Oh my goodness. I lived in this building in Toronto. It was 100-year-old building then. And my best friend and I were living in a little bachelor apartment in Toronto because it was expensive, $598 a month, which now I'm like, we thought that was expensive then.
Yeah.
Um, and so, we made it work and it was definitely haunted. And there were so many things that happened in that building. And I specifically remember this one day, we were both out in the living room area, which I mean, it was a bachelor apartment, so it was all kind of open. We were both doing homework and, both focused on what we were doing. And in our little kitchenette, we had this microwave stand and we had a box of Kleenex that we had filled with plastic bags. That was our plastic bag dispenser at the time. And we heard this rustling happening. And immediately we thought rodent because we'd had that experience as well. And this plastic bag, shot out into the middle of the room and then fell to the ground. And we both sat there for what felt like an eternity, processing what we just witnessed, looked at each other, and it was sort of a, did you see that? I saw that. Yeah, you saw that? Okay. Okay. And then we just went back to our homework because neither one of us wanted to talk about it because it was so far removed from anything either of us had ever experienced. And Sarah had had experiences with spirits as well in the past. She actually saw spirits, which I'm like, that's not fair. I want to see them. I don't see them, I hear them. And so that was just the beginning of many instances of things happening. There was another time we were watching a movie. She ended up on the phone with a friend of hers, and I was getting up to put the popcorn bowl away. And I felt this draft, this chill. So I went to the window to shut the window, and I was like, oh, it's not open. So I put the popcorn bowl on the counter, and I was walking back to the couch, and I felt something run by me, brush past me. The books that were on my dresser, I had a stack of books and a candle beside it. The candle snuffed out, and the books flew up against the wall and fell to the ground. All the books, not just one, all of them. And I stopped because I was processing. And I heard Sarah say, just a minute, what the fuck was that? And I was like, I don't know. What? Like, we were just so beside ourselves because it was quite, it felt violent, not in, we weren't scared like in that way. We didn't feel threatened. We were just like, what the heck was that? What just happened? And we were processing. And I was like, it wasn't a breeze because I checked the window. Okay, so that, like, scientifically, we were trying to debunk. We couldn't. We couldn't. What could possibly pick up 4 or 5 books and throw them against the wall? Right? I couldn't even successfully pick them all up and throw them against the wall. And so at that point, we're like, okay, we got a ghost. We have a ghost. We called him Larry, and we spent a lot of time because I felt like he was a bit of a prankster, because things would go missing and then we'd find them in the oddest of places. And, I was even doing my hair one day, and I went to go get the kettle because my kettle was going off. So I put my hair dryer and my brush on the toilet seat, on the seat in the bathroom. And I went out to turn the kettle off, and I came back, my brush was gone. I was like, come on. And I looked everywhere. Did it fall? Did it? No, it was in the middle of the couch in the living room, which I hadn't even gone near. Like
Yeah.
my path to the kitchen and back was nowhere there. So we were constantly saying, okay, Larry, give it back. Okay, Larry, I need this. I've got to go to school. Don't mess with me now. It was just, we got to live symbiotically eventually. But there were some moments of I never went down to the laundry room in that building. I could not. I don't know. There was not anything good down there.
There's a laundry room in the basement, by chance?
Yes, you had to go down to it. So luckily I took my laundry back to my parents' house in university, so I would do my laundry there. My roommate didn't have that option. So she braved the basement. Nope.
A lot of times when you hear people talk about the poltergeist style situations where things are being thrown and things, it seems very abrupt a lot of the times. A lot of times what you'll find when people have stories like that is there are other things that are not necessarily spiritual or supernatural in their lives that are in some sort of maybe upheaval or like state of liminality. Was that possible that was true of one or both of you at that time?
It's absolutely possible. I didn't think of it like that. It is absolutely possible. I think too, people think poltergeist activity is like a negative entity, and I don't believe it is. I think it may feel that way because the force of like the books flying against the wall seem huge force, but we're dealing with spirits needing to use a huge amount of energy to move something in the physical world. So it's almost like somebody who doesn't know their own strength. And so I don't believe it's always negative. Where some of those, the paranormal shows, it drives me nuts because, they make it seem like it's such a negative, evil thing. And I don't think it always is. I think spirit will always try to communicate with us, but how they move things is very different than us picking something up
Yeah.
and moving it. It takes a different kind of energy and a lot of energy for them to be able to move something in our physical world.
Yeah, I can't take the majority of those television shows seriously, and I really can't stand to watch most of them. Everything has got to be a demon. Everything's got to be negative. Everything has to be the exact same thing, and it just no real person I've ever talked to's experience has been anywhere near what these people show on those shows.
No, I agree with you 100%. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. And sometimes I'm like, I wish I was there, or I'll hear something or experience something before they've realized. I'll see or hear or feel something before they do. And I'm like, oh, if only I was there. Hello, do you not see this happening? Do you not feel? But
Yeah, they should contact you.
right, I've had some amazing experiences going into places and doing clearings. I had this one experience in this business in my hometown that asked me to come, and there was some strange occurrences happening. The fridge, they were finding the fridge open every morning. They would come into work and the fridge was open when they know that it wasn't left that way at night. Things were being moved on shelves, stuff. So they asked me to come in. So my friend Kesley and I went in. She came via Zoom. She's in California and we do clearings all over the world. So it was a fascinating building. One of the oldest buildings probably in the country. And there was so much we were picking up on. There was a gambling ring that was there at one point, which I don't know the history of that place. So I was coming at it fully unaware of anything that had happened. And when I said that I'm getting like a gambling thing, almost like cockfights or dog fights, there's blood on the floor. There's blood on the floor. And the woman who was with us walking us through said, you do know this used to be a billiards. I'm like, I did not know that. But it explained there was very secretive stuff that was happening, money exchanging hands. There was some bad blood in that area. But at one point, I was being called to the basement. So I asked this woman, is there a basement here? Because I'm being told I need to go to the basement. She goes, well, it's not really a basement. It's more of a crawl space. So I went and I sat in that space, and there was about 7 spirits there. And I said to her, they're being held here, but they're not being held captive. It's not anything menacing. They're being held to protect them. I said, almost like an underground railroad feel is what I'm getting. Well, sure as shit, we looked it up because I didn't know if that was even possible. Turns out the Underground Railroad came through our town as they were taking these escaped slaves up to the Owen Sound area in Ontario.
Awesome.
I was blown away. And
Yeah.
this is why I say to people, I can't make this shit up.
Yeah.
Right? I had no idea. I was just saying what I was feeling and what I was getting from those spirits. And my friend Kesley, she's like, did they die in a fire? She says, I'm seeing bodies in a fire. And I said, no, like, I don't know what happened to them, but it's not a fire. They just showed me that they were being held in that basement for protection. Next day, the woman who was there with us talked to the owner of the building and asked her about, was there ever a fire here? She goes, no, but in the basement was the incendiary or whatever it's called. It was the town crematorium.
Oh,
Hmm.
And of course, that's not in the basement anymore. It's
yeah.
empty. We didn't know that, but Kesley kept seeing people in
Yep.
a fire.
Fire.
It was the town crematorium. We didn't know
Wild.
that either. So fascinating things going into places and the residual energy that lies there. And there were spirits there that we helped cross over. They were stuck. The fridge was being opened by a little boy because the fridge was broken and he didn't want the food to spoil. So he kept opening the door so that they would take a look at the fridge to see that it was broken. And sure enough, the seal was broken on the door. They had to get it fixed.
Wow. That's interesting.
Mhm.
That's very cool. Yeah, because I mean, you hear different stories of different, I think, different types of spirits, like there's some that are just like kind of residual, just reenacting, but that was a very conscious spirit and knew what was going on and was trying to help. That's very cool.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And what was interesting about that space is there were both. There were
Yeah.
intelligent spirits who were able to communicate with us, and there was this residual energy. That was the gambling stuff that I was getting.
Yeah. That makes sense. Leaving its imprint on the
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. So
Very
we did a
cool.
lot of clearing, and it was a restaurant as well. And
Hmm.
they said the difference was night and day, literally from when we cleared it and we got rid of some of it. I felt it was almost like cobwebs, like it's hanging on. And we cleared that. They had the best season monetarily that they've ever had
Hmm.
after we did that clearing for them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to just share your story with us and just, yeah,
Well,
go
for
deep with
having
us.
me.
I love it. Yeah. How can people find you?
Well, I'm all over social media.
Okay.
So they can find me, Deva Neely, um, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And I just started a YouTube channel called Good Grief, talking about my story, um, and also opening up to talk about grief in general, and not just grief from losing somebody in death, but to talk about the grief that happens in our everyday lives, and the dysfunction in family that causes much grief. And you know
Mhm.
that from experience as well. So
Yeah.
I started that as a platform to start talking openly about the things that I'm uncomfortable talking about.
Awesome. Yes, we
Awesome.
will definitely put all that in the show notes and I will be following you momentarily.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Really appreciate this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. It's been fun. Great way to spend my day.
Thank you so much for being here. If you have a strange story you want to share with us, email us at seekerandskeptic@gmail.com. We look forward to talking to you soon.